The second tense we're going to learn about is the pluperfect subjunctive. It's almost as easy as the imperfect subjunctive. If you remember, the imperfect subjunctive started with the second principal part, which was the present active infinitive. Our pluperfect subjunctive is going to start with the perfect infinitive. If you remember from our infinitive unit, we formed the perfect infinitive from taking the third principal part and adding the letters SSE to it. So now we're going to take that perfect infinitive form and add subjunctive endings to it. MST, mus, tis, nt. Just to give you a sample of what these pluperfect verbs look like in action, we have nawigawissemus, weinissemus, apropinquawisem. If you notice their translations, they are actually identical to the way we translated pluperfect indicative. We need the word had in there to make it pluperfect. We had sailed. We had come. I had approached. Pluperfect passive forms begin with the fourth principal part, in the same way that pluperfect passive indicative forms started. The only catch is that now we're in the subjunctive mood. So instead of using the fourth principal part with eram, eras, erat, we are going to use the subjunctive form of eram. Now, if you remember, eram is the imperfect form of sum. So now that we're in the subjunctive mood, we're going to recreate eram as an imperfect subjunctive. It will be essem, esses, esset, essemis, essetis, essent, because we have the infinitive plus a personal ending. This process of creating pluperfect passive verbs also works for deponents, where you take the first half of the third principal part, and then you use this as the auxiliary verb. Some pluperfect forms for you: rogati essent, capti essemus, percussus essem. We still have this compound verb structure. We still have had, because it's still pluperfect, and we have this passive nature. They had been asked. We had been captured. I had been struck. And finally, pluperfect deponents. It has the same structure in the way it looks, but we're still going to translate it actively because that's the beast of deponent verbs. Conati essent, they had tried. Regressi essemus, we had returned. Adortus essem, I had attacked. We're also today delving into the second type of dependent subjunctive clause. They are called indirect questions. So we're going to see another version of a compound sentence in which there are two verbs. The sentence part that has the subjunctive verb is what's called the dependent clause. These dependent clauses are going to be called indirect questions. Compare first the nature of direct questions and indirect questions. Here's an example of a direct question. Were the boys going to the baths today? Indirect question. Mother does not know if the boys were going to the baths today. When was Cornelia eating dinner? Marcus wondered when Cornelia was eating dinner. Why was Flavia sending a letter? Cornelia asked why Flavia was sending a letter. Whom was Cornelius inviting to dinner? Aurelia wonders whom Cornelius was inviting to dinner. You can see the same relationship here that we first saw in indirect statements, where we used to have a direct statement, and then we had that direct statement embedded into something larger, longer, and slightly more complex. We have the same notion going on here. The direct question, were the boys going to the baths, now gets embedded into something more complex. Mother does not know if the boys were going to the baths today. So there is an implicit question in the indirect version of it, but it's not as explicit as it was with the question mark. So we're going to need a question word in every single one of these indirect questions. And this is one of the hallmarks of an indirect question that lets you know that that's exactly what you're dealing with. These question words are ones that we've gathered before throughout the year, so this is really just replicating that list again. Who, what, when, where, or the other where. Quis, quid, ubi, quando, ubi, quo. More question words that you will see in indirect questions. Obviously, you're only going to see one of these for each indirect question, but I just wanted to put out the list of all the potential possibilities. Why? How many? If? What kind of? And finally, we have our interrogative pronouns that we had talked about right after our relative pronoun unit. Which, whom, whose, to or for whom, to or for which. So now we're going to put this all together. We have here an indirect question. Mother does not know if the boys were going to the baths today. The embedded question I've put in italics. That's what's going to employ the subjunctive verb. So if the boys were going is the form that we want. The verb to go is oire. The subject is the boys, which makes it third plural. Therefore, the verb form that we're going to be creating is irent. In the second one that we did before, Marcus wondered when Cornelia was eating dinner. The embedded question, when was Cornelia eating dinner? So was eating dinner is our verb, keno, kenare, a nice first conjugation for you. The subject is Cornelia. She's third person singular. Therefore, the verb form that we want is kenaret. Cornelia asked why Flavia was sending a letter. So our direct question gets embedded into this indirect one. Why Flavia was sending a letter? That's your dependent clause. It doesn't make sense unless you have Cornelia asked at the very beginning to round out the thought. Mitto mittere is send. The subject is third person singular. Therefore, your verb form is mitteret. And finally, Aurelia wonders whom Cornelius was inviting to dinner. So we have that embedded question again that is now dependent upon the rest of the sentence in order to make sense. Whom Cornelius was inviting to dinner. Invito, invitare, to invite. Third person singular subject. Therefore, invitaret is our verb. All right, happy translating.